You're probably watching this video because you are looking for a PIM system. And we know how overwhelming it can be because a lot of PIM providers claim to be the best. But the really smart question that every decision maker should be asking themselves when looking for a PIM system is not only how much does a PIM cost, but also what is the total cost of ownership. And today, together with a subject matter expert from Deloitte Digital, we are going to discuss exactly this, the total cost of ownership of a PIM system. Hi, Abhishek. Thanks so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
I know that a lot of viewers could really use your expertise because they're searching right now for the PIM providers. And this interview will help them make informed decisions. I know that every PIM provider says that pricing really depends on things like the number of sales channels and the number of languages and SKUs. But when someone researching PIM provider, why is it so important to look beyond just the software costs? Why do you think they should look into the total cost of ownership? And what do you actually mean by the total cost of ownership?
Yeah, so it's a very important concept, total cost of ownership, and it's not something new. It's been always there in the software world. It basically revolves around how to kind of maintain, build a software system. So it's easier for a PIM system, which includes like not just the direct and the indirect costs, but there's also that element of far broader than the licensing and the upfront cost that comes with it. And it does matter significantly when making strategic decisions, especially in the retail or B2B environments. So, for example, like it's very important for businesses to kind of understand and the aspects of the agility costs that comes with it. So, for example, what's the cost to kind of innovate and how can businesses innovate fast? Because there's an element of cost of waste that often people overlook and don't really factor in when they are evaluating software options. There's an element of vendor lock-in. There's an element of switching platforms. So those are the kind of things that comes at a later stage, which is often kind of left out when people go into kind of choosing platforms. Um, it's important to like to not avoid the hidden costs. So these are the kind of hidden costs that comes with it because it helps you make the longer term planning, which essentially means that as the business stakeholder, you're in a better position to kind of think about what enables your value realization, and also it helps as a guide on build or buy decisions for your business.
hmm And are there any specific categories or areas where those costs tend to show up?
Yeah, I mean, it's there's always these usual categories. You have the licensing costs, you have the implementation costs, your hosting costs. You even have things like how do you maintain and operate. Usually, what we do, those are the kind of categories we often look into when kind of assessing platforms. But I think the key ones to look forward to and really factor in when evaluating the cost of ownership is the element of things like integration costs, like end of the day, you need to put your PIM system within an ecosystem of all other stuffs that you have. So how does your integration costs gets impacted? Like what is the level of skills that you have in your organization to kind of build and maintain? Because organizations often choose products which are very specialized, which essentially means that you need to go into the market and hire specialized skills, which perhaps just blow up the cost profile of the platform. So very important to kind of factor in what it means from a training and a change management perspective, um, what you do with the people that you have in the business, not just the technology people, but also the business users. How would they be flexible in terms of adopting a new software solution? But then with all that comes the factor around, how do you kind of scale for the future? How do you enable the future features? How is a business ready to adopt the changes coming in, the unknown changes coming in later on down the line?
And you also mentioned some hidden or surprise costs that companies can face with the PIM systems. So, how can they actually avoid this hidden costs?
Yeah, so there's some elements. So, for example, custom integration. So they can really be complex and expensive to maintain, especially if these services and the APIs are limited and non-standard. So it's important for organizations as they evaluate is to be mindful of that. So there's a lot of options around leveraging pre-built connectors that's available with modern PIM platforms like Bluestone, or even perhaps leverage the modern integration platforms that's there in the market, which a lot of businesses use to simplify the integration logic. Apart from the technical side of it, I think the element of user training and adoption, as I mentioned, is very important. It We often underestimate the time and the costs needed to onboard business users into new workflows. So it's very important, like as you go along the journey of onboarding a new PIM platform, how to kind of include the hands-on training sessions with your business users. How do you ensure that you have simple documentations and the so-called how-to guides for them to kind of navigate as they adopt, uh, you know, the new solution that's being brought into the team. Um, and just to touch on the from a exit costs and the vendor lock-in costs, switching PIM vendors later can be very disruptive, and it could be very costly as well. So it's important, like as we select new PIM solutions, it's important to choose a vendor, which has a more flexible and open architecture, which essentially means you have a much lower risk of vendor lock-in. You maintain your product data model, which is much more portable, and also the fact, you have decent enough documentation so that if there is a need, you're not locked in to one specific vendor, and that provides the flexibility, and you can avoid those surprise costs that may come up later in the game.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Once you get your PIM system, you want to make sure that it will serve you well for many years because like migrating project data every 2 years is a pain for your team. And can you also elaborate on this on the agility and flexibility? What does it actually mean in the PIM software?
Yeah, so from a PIM perspective, I think we need to look into it from the perspective of how do you kind of go to market quicker with new product launches. So because it's an element of product, which essentially what you will sell in the market, everything revolves around it. How to ensure that you get the right information out to the customers, you have the right attribution in, you appear in your search results. You also need to appear in today's world in your Gen AI chatbots. So it's very important to kind of having a platform which can adapt, and you can make the changes to ensure that you don't need to wait for a period of 2 months or 3 months to get changes out of the door. So that's why flexibility is key in today's world.
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree with you. And we see this with the AI. And as you mentioned, like right now, the products, they can also appear in LLMs. And the question is if your PIM is ready, if PIM can actually support this, and make sure that your products are visible like in the search and in the LLMs as well. Mm, Abhishek, what would you recommend actually? Buy a PIM system off the shelf or maybe build one from scratch according to all the requirements that company has?
Yeah, so it really depends on the business model. So if your business model genuinely uses PIM as a core differentiator, and your data model and the stuffs do not really fit into a specific mold, then probably it makes sense to build. But else, it's very hard to justify the time, the cost, and the risk of building it from the scratch. Um, what we have seen is model composable PIM solutions like Bluestone. Um, there is quite a high level, you know, in terms of features, the capabilities, the flexibility, and extensibility that's there. So it's not really a problem that's not been solved in the market. So I think I would be cautious to go and build a PIM system in the current scenario, because that essentially means there's a lot of engineering efforts that you need to do to build and maintain your own platform. So I would much rather have that problem, which is already solved in the market, and to be able to plug and play.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Because if this is a composable composable system and microservices based, it means that companies, they can just customize their PIM essentially, and also pay for what they're using. So that's pretty nice as well. Abhishek, if you could also give one piece of advice to your company trying to get the most value, not just the lowest price from their PIM investment, what would it be?
I think it's important that PIM needs to be looked into as a business capability and not just an IT tool. Often, I think we have seen it goes down the path that it is looked into from an IT systems standpoint. So it's very important to align your technology decisions with your product strategy. What's your content workflows, and also go to market operations for day one. Because it's not just about having a set of features in a software platform, but it's also about outcomes. So the real, ROI comes from faster product onboarding, richer content for channels, and better conversion. So it's not just about picking the cheapest license. It's about selecting a strategic platform that would help your business grow in the nearer to longer term.
Bluestone PIM, together with Deloitte Digital, has published a white paper about the total cost of ownership. You can get your copy. Just go and find the link in the description below. Inside, you will find the TCO formula and, of course, the practical checklists that you can take to every vendor meeting when evaluating the PIM provider. Thank you for watching, and until the next time.